I used to be a professional diver for a private salvage company, not the glamorous kind of diving you see on documentaries or travel shows. No, we worked in pitch black, hundreds of meters below the surface, pulling wreckage from forgotten wars, sunken cargo ships, and sometimes stuff nobody wanted to talk about. In September of 2022, I was hired for a classified dive. A man showed up at my door, no company badge, no smile, just a folder with GPS coordinates and a contract offering $50,000 for a single dive. He called it a deep recovery job, said it involved retrieving an object of interest from the Rongelap Trench, a place most divers avoid because of its radioactive history. I should have said no. I knew something was off, but the money, the curiosity, it was too much. 3 days later, I was on a small vessel with two men who didn't talk much. They gave me a pressure suit that looked like it came straight out of a lab, along with a modified helmet camera. "Don't turn the audio on," one of them warned me. I laughed it off, thinking it was some kind of tech issue. It wasn't. The descent took almost an hour. My lights barely pierced the thick green-black water. No fish, no movement, just that crushing silence pressing in from all sides. And then, there it was, a metallic object, perfectly spherical, lodged halfway into the ocean floor. It didn't look man-made, it looked grown, organic, smooth, and humming. As I approached it, my suit's lights flickered. For a split second, I saw something moving behind the sphere. I turned fast. Nothing. Just silt. I touched the surface of the object, preparing to attach the lift clamps. And it moved. The object pulsed, like a heartbeat. My helmet crackled with static. And then, I heard a voice, not over the comms, not from outside, inside my own head, a whisper. "Go away." I panicked, started pulling back, but the object began, opening, like a flower, petals unfurling, revealing a dark core. From that core, something reached out, long, thin, pale. It wasn't a tentacle, it was a hand. I screamed, began scrambling to ascend, but my suit wouldn't move. My arms were frozen, not physically, mentally. I couldn't command my body. Something had taken hold of my thoughts. "Let me in." The voice was clearer now. "I need a vessel." The hand pressed against my helmet, and that's when the audio kicked in on its own. Static, followed by children crying, then laughter, then screaming, so much screaming. Just as suddenly, I snapped out of it. My body responded again. I fired my ascent tether, shooting up through the water. By the time I reached the surface, the two men were waiting, not with concern, but with calm detachment. "Did it speak to you?" one asked. I didn't answer. I couldn't. They took the camera, took the helmet, told me I'd never be contacted again, and warned me not to talk. 2 days later, I started bleeding from my ears. Then the dreams began. Visions of the ocean opening, swallowing cities. A voice whispering, "You brought me closer." I don't dive anymore. I don't sleep. And every time I look into deep water, I feel something. Looking back. Back in 2019, me and my best friend Chris went on a sailing trip across the South Pacific. It was meant to be a once-in-a-lifetime adventure. 2 friends, clear skies, and endless ocean. We had planned the route for months. Food, water, maps, satellite phone, everything was accounted for. We left from Fiji, headed toward French Polynesia. The first few days were perfect. Clear stars at night, calm winds. It felt like we were completely free. On day 6, Chris woke me up at 3 a.m. "Hey, did you hear that?" He looked pale, shaken. I sat up. The only sound was the waves brushing against the hull. He said he'd heard knocking from underneath the boat. I laughed, told him it was probably the current bumping driftwood. He didn't laugh. It knocked back, in rhythm. The next night, the knocking came again. I heard it this time. Tap, tap, tap. Pause, then again. We checked under the boat in the morning. Nothing. No damage, no floating debris, nothing that could knock. That night, Chris stayed up to keep watch. By sunrise, he was gone. I found his watch on the deck, his life vest, but no sign of him. No blood, no struggle, just gone. I turned the boat around, radioed for help. Hours later, the Coast Guard responded. But here's the part I never told anyone. I checked the GPS tracker. At exactly 3:17 a.m., the time he disappeared, the boat had stopped, dead still. Then, the GPS glitched, and for 90 seconds, it showed our location 500 meters below sea level. That's impossible. We didn't sink. There was no storm, just silence. The search went on for weeks. They never found Chris. They told me it was likely he fell overboard, drifted too far to be found. But I know the truth. Because 2 weeks after I returned, I got an email. From Chris's account. No subject. Just a single line. It wanted me. It wants more. And attached was a photo. It looked like it was taken underwater, but not in the ocean. It looked like a cave, lit by strange blue light. And in the center was Chris, his eyes black, his mouth open wide, as if he was screaming. But no sound came through. I tried replying. The email account didn't exist anymore. Sometimes I still hear that knocking in my dreams. 3 taps, pause, 3 more, and when I wake up, I swear I can still feel the floor under me sway, like I'm back on the water, but I'm not. I never got back on a boat again. This happened in 2021. I was part of a private salvage crew working off the coast of Indonesia. We scanned shipping lanes looking for abandoned vessels to claim. It was dangerous work, but the money was good. And sometimes what we found out there wasn't meant to be found. On a humid evening in July, we picked up a drifting signal about 90 miles off Sumatra. No registered ship name, no call signs, but a signal, repeating coordinates, over and over. The radar showed a large object, just floating. No movement, no response. We reached it by midnight. It was an old freighter, rusted, half covered in barnacles, no country markings, no flag, and most disturbing of all, no lights, no power, just sitting there, dead quiet. We boarded with flashlights. The deck was soaked in seawater, but there was no sign of a struggle, no blood, no damage, just abandoned. The crew quarters, empty, beds made, food rotting on trays, the bridge, all systems were shut down, the logbook was missing. We searched the whole vessel, and here's where it gets horrifying. Every clock on board was stopped at 3:41 a.m. Even wristwatches left behind, not broken, paused, like time had just halted. In the cargo hold, we found something that didn't belong. Rows of sealed crates, packed in ice, unmarked. We opened one. Inside was a preserved corpse, human, but its eyes were sewn shut, and its mouth was wide open, as if frozen mid-scream. Each crate held a different body, male, female, young, old, some modern, some ancient-looking. It didn't make sense, and yet the cold was still fresh, like they had been placed there yesterday. We called in the Coast Guard, but by the time we left to relay the signal, that ship? Gone. Completely. Radar blank, coordinates offline, as if it was never there. But the worst part? 2 weeks later, one of my crew, Lee, went missing, left his apartment unlocked, laptop open, food on the stove, just vanished. I found a message saved on his desktop. It was a voice memo. Just Lee whispering, "The ship. It still calls to me. I see them every time I close my eyes." Then silence. We don't talk about it now, but some nights, when I'm up late, the radio in my house turns on by itself, and there it is again. That same signal, coordinates, repeating, over and over. You. This happened during a freelance job I took in 2019. I was a deep-sea welder at the time, one of those guys who gets paid stupid money to fix things where no light ever reaches. I'd done oil rigs, sunken tankers, you name it. But this job was different. No company name, no official briefing, just a one-sentence message. We need someone quiet, discreet. You'll be well compensated. The coordinates? Somewhere in the middle of the Philippine Trench. That's one of the deepest parts of the ocean. Almost no one goes down there. But I said yes. They flew me out on a cargo plane. No questions. No phones. I landed on a private ship, all military looking but with no flags. I was escorted below deck, and that's when I saw it. A black submarine. No numbers, no markings. It looked like it was built for war, but this thing was bigger, longer, and had this weird hum, like it was alive. They told me I had one task, weld a breach inside the sub's lower deck. Then they sealed me in, alone, with only a radio and my torch. Once I dropped inside, everything changed. First thing I noticed, the walls were warm, not metal, more like tissue, like I was inside something biological. I thought it was my mind playing tricks, but then I saw it. A trail of bloody handprints leading down the corridor, fresh, still wet. The breach I was sent to fix? There was no damage, no cracks, nothing to weld. But there was a hatch, and behind it, a chamber full of water. Floating inside were dozens of bodies, all wearing old naval uniforms, like they'd been down here since World War II. Eyes wide open, skin bloated, still drifting in perfect rows, like they were watching me. I tried the radio, no response. I tried the ladder, locked. Then, the lights flickered, and I swear to God, I heard breathing, heavy, right behind me. But no one was there, just that low hum, growing louder, almost like a voice, like it was speaking. I backed into a corner, panicking, and then the walls started to pulse, like they were beating, like a heart. I realized something that still haunts me. This wasn't a machine. This submarine was alive. I blacked out, woke up on the ship's deck. The sub? Gone. The crew wouldn't talk to me. They dumped me at a port with $40,000 in cash and a warning, don't ever speak about what you saw. Not to anyone. I've never found any records of that vessel, not in military logs, not on the dark web, nothing. But sometimes when I sleep, I hear it, that deep hum, that low, wet breathing, and I feel it again, the walls, pulsing, waiting. I work on a privately owned rescue vessel stationed near the Philippine Sea. Most of our job involves responding to emergency beacons from cargo ships or fishing boats in trouble, capsizing, engine failure, pirates, things like that. But one night, we received a distress call that didn't make any sense. It came through at 2:11 a.m. A weak, crackling voice. Mayday. Mayday. This is the Minerva. Hull breach. Sinking fast. Coordinates. It sounded urgent, desperate. But when we checked the coordinates, they led us straight into the open ocean. No islands, no shipping routes, just water. Still, protocol required us to investigate, so we did. We arrived at the coordinates just after 5 a.m. as the sun began to rise. The sea was calm, not a ripple, not a bird in the sky, no sign of a ship, and no debris. Which was strange. If a boat had sunk just hours earlier, there would have been something. We scanned the area with radar. Nothing. Sonar. Also nothing. We tried hailing them back. Minerva, this is Rescue 1. Do you copy? Over. Silence. Then suddenly, we got a reply, but not through the radio. The voice came from the speaker itself, like it was inside the system. Faint, metallic, almost echoing. Too late. They're beneath us now. The hair on my arms stood up. Our captain, thinking it was interference, told us to scan below. That's when sonar picked something up. A massive shape, directly under us. It was the size of a large vessel, maybe bigger. But it didn't move. It didn't have a name, a beacon, or any identification. And then, it disappeared. The sonar blanked out like it had never been there. We stood there in total silence, just staring into the deep black water. That's when our engines suddenly cut out. Everything, lights, instruments, comms, dead. Only the emergency backup kicked in a few seconds later. We turned around immediately. We didn't say a word until we got back to base. Later that week, we looked up the name Minerva and found out it was a cargo ship that sank in that exact area in 1958. Everyone on board died. The distress call we received was word for word the same one that ship had sent before vanishing.